Another pandemic? Really? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Prepper Nation. I am John. You probably already knew that, but just in case you didn't, I am John. Thank you very much for being here. You newbies and you usual suspects, I appreciate it. If you don't mind, shoot a thumbs up. Maybe hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. So we got to talk about this new flu, this new pandemic, I believe. I think that they are laying the groundwork for another C-19 type of event. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments, but I don't know. I got a vibe. I've been seeing this a lot popping up in mainstream media. It's down near the bottom in all of the mainstream media, but it's consistently there. It almost feels like, the subliminal programming, how it's there and you're not really paying attention to it, but they're kind of getting people used to the idea or to the concept, okay? And some of us have believed, I'm not gonna lie, some of us have believed for a while that we haven't seen the end of the medical tyranny, would be the way to put it. So there was an article that hit mainstream media a couple of days back. Now, I saw it, it was on Fox Business or something like that, but it was on it was like on Sky, BBC, all the legacy media, CNN. The bird flu pandemic, is that in the future? That was the headline. And the EU, the European Union, is now warning of potential mass spread of the bird flu. They cite this because of the lack of the immunity that humans have. This is typically not something that humans, it's pretty rare usually, and so we don't have immunity for this stuff, and they're beginning to see cases popping up here, and it's transferring really quickly. And herein lies the problem, at least for me. Again, y'all let me know what you think, but here's the problem for me: the timing of all of this. All right, so normally when I hear about the bird flu or something like that, it's kind of I'm not look, I'm being honest with y'all. It's kind of like, okay, here we go again. We've heard about this for the 100th time this year already. But again, the timing. Occasionally, you might see it on a friend's website, or you may see it in mainstream media on one of the websites at the very bottom. But again, this is across all of the legacy media, and it's starting to work its way up. It's not a top story yet, but it's starting little by little to work its way up. And again, the timing with the election. And I mean, let's take a look at where we're at with the election here in the United States. Assuming we have an election in November, big assumption on my part, right? So we have a rematch between President Joe Biden, and President Donald Trump. And I get that we have Trump fans out there. I don't know, this is hard to fathom. We may have Biden fans listening to this right now, but by and large, this is a matchup that nobody really wants. Nobody really wants these two candidates running head to head again. It's very unpopular when it comes to the average American. You know, everybody has their reasons, I guess, but let's take a look at where we're at with this election. Democrats tried to put Trump in jail, and I think they really believed they were going to be able to incarcerate the man and ruin his chances of running, for office. That didn't work. And then they tried to disqualify Donald Trump from being on the ballots and even being electable at this point. That didn't work. That was overturned in the highest court of the land. Then they tried to bankrupt this man to where he would lose his properties. He would not have money, essentially, to run for the United States office without taking in a lot of outside donor money. That didn't work. And so now, and Backwoods and I were talking about this, on the Radioactive podcast this week, how a lot of seats are becoming vacant all of the sudden in Congress. And it almost feels like Somebody had even said in chat, people are taking money and bowing out so these seats can be filled by somebody else. The swamp is loading for a fight, if you will, or they're reloading. I guess you could say it almost feels like this firewall is being put up because I think for the first time since Joe Biden, was sworn in as thief in chief. Let's be honest here, right? For the first time since then, I believe the swamp and the world elites, if you will, your weefers, they finally they understand. Okay, Trump may become president of the United States again. What are we going to do about it? They're putting a firewall into place. They're trying to minimize, I think, what Trump can do once he gets into office, should that be the case. Then you factor in Kennedy Jr., who is becoming, believe it or not, folks, he's becoming very popular with the younger folks who don't like the Biden versus Trump rematch. A lot of the younger folks, and he's pulling a lot of votes from Biden, from the Joe Biden campaign. And this, of course, plays into Trump. No, I don't think Kennedy Jr. is going to win, but I think he may actually win this election for Donald Trump. He's a major player in this election, like it or not, and I think that he's going to pull so many votes that they can't sweep things under rugs and they can't turn the lights out for 5 minutes and move the furniture around, if you know what I'm saying. So, with all of this replacement going on, it feels like the firewall is being put into place. It feels like, the swamp here in the United States, but also your globalist elites, like your weefers and your EU. It feels like in NATO that they understand, okay, we may have Donald Trump again. And that's very unpopular for these groups because he's not on board. At least that's my personal opinion. He's not on board with a lot of things that are taking place. Um, and look, a Trump presidency, like him or not, could help the economy as the average American sees it. Now, I'm not on Wall Street. I don't know how it's going to affect Wall Street or big corporate America. I'm talking about from the viewpoint of an average American who is paying bills month to month, paying, property taxes, buying gasoline, buying groceries, having to pay for insurance. He's a better candidate. Like he could improve the economy unless we see a pandemic. Right? The economy was humming along last time, and we saw a pandemic emerge, and the timing was strange. Now, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, God forbid, right? But the timing was strange because it also fell in an election year, and it just feels like the C-19 came along at just the right time to begin to crash our economy, and we went from this absolute, it wasn't perfect, but it was a great economy. It feels like a great economy compared to 2024, at least. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I misremember, but it just feels like things were more affordable and people had money to spend. Election year, pandemic, all of a sudden that's no longer the case. And it just feels like Trump is on his way back into the White House. All the major polls have the man winning. Even the left leaning polls. Again, Kennedy plays into this. And it just feels like they're setting up the framework to me for another pandemic. So this is the H5N1. And the EU is saying that large scale transmission, human to human, is possible with this thing. This is the big fear. And so they've got a couple of things that they want to implement. Pay attention to this, folks. They want to implement these two things just to be on the safe side, just to avoid another pandemic. The first is increased tracking and surveillance on people who may be at risk. Do y'all remember back at the C-19 when they put the tracking software on your phones? I don't know how many people downloaded it. I didn't, but the people that had the software, it was supposed to tell you, okay, is there anybody in this store that recently got diagnosed or was exposed to the C-19? I'm not a fan of tracking and surveillance in general, pandemic or otherwise. But they want to increase this. They want to begin to implement this on people. And I think if they do this, it's going to start in Europe, but it will quickly spread. And you'll see people here in the United States before long calling for this. The second is, of course, uh, a variety of whiskey shots that would help somehow in fantasy land. It's going to help the human body resist, the H5N1. We have no actual resistance. So I don't know how injecting something is going to help better a resistance that doesn't exist, but they don't go on to explain that. They don't need to because people believe propaganda, right? They also call for, this is the EU, the potential culling of poultry and fur animal farming. So they don't go on record and say how many they would cull. They don't know, would it be a 10,000 chickens? Would it be 10 million we're talking about? How much tracking would be implemented, stuff like this. And they want a farming database, even for you, if you're a homesteader and you got 20 chickens outside, they want to know about it. If you have other animals, they want to know about it. Again, I'm not a fan of tracking in the first place and surveillance, especially by globalist groups. Bad enough when your own government does it, but globalist groups, I'm out on that one. They do say that this is typically rare. All right, it's rare for a human to catch this virus, because again, we're not exposed to it very often, but it's starting to pop up, and it does have a 60% fatality rate, which just means in layman's terms, if 10 human beings catch this, 6 of them are goners. 6 out of 10. Uh, that's a scary number, but I believe it's intended to be a scary number, if you know what I mean. Um, do you remember how I've asked in the past on this channel? We'd be talking about the C-19. And I've asked this question before. What would you have done differently? How would you have prepped differently? Nobody prepped perfectly for the C-19 because I guess, maybe you were here for the Spanish flu. I don't know. But for a large majority of us, we weren't here for the Spanish flu. So it was our first real pandemic. You know what I mean? And everybody prepped a little bit differently. And of course, mistakes were made. Mistakes were made on my part. How would you do it differently if you had a redo? I think you might get a chance to have a redo, unfortunately, because I do see them pushing this, especially if Trump gets far and away. Right now, he's leading by a few, percentage points here, a few here, but he is gaining ground. And as he gains more ground, I mean, this may be the card that they play. I'm sure they have several cards up their sleeves that they can play. Who knows? Maybe they'll try and cancel it outright. They've tried to, I believe, and we'll talk about it on the next video, to trigger World War III. They've tried all kinds of things, but this could be a card that they could, play once again because people are already used to it. They're already used to the idea of mandates. They're already used to the idea of lockdowns and things. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying the average jabron out here. They're used to being told you can't go outside. They're used to being told, close your windows, open your windows at Thanksgiving, don't go to church, this sort of thing. And there was a lot of compliance last time. This could be meant to scare people away from the polls. Hey, let's have an election, but let's make it during a pandemic. Maybe we can just do mail-in ballots or online voting. Maybe they introduce this. I don't know. I'm spitballing here. But again, the timing just seems political to me, is the point I'm trying to make. Because like Trump, dislike Trump, do whatever you want to do. But if Trump becomes president of the United States, he's already said a few things that he plans to do day one. He's going to free the J6 prisoners. He said that is his priority the minute he walks into the White House. There's a danger in that from the left because if these people are freed, right? And I agree they shouldn't be locked up. Maybe a few of them. The ones that were climbing the side of the buildings and kicking doors in, right? Even though it's the people's house, they were breaking the law to a degree. But I'm talking about the people that were just outside protesting, okay? J6 is a sensitive topic because we always talk about people don't do anything. People don't stand up, and oftentimes people will say, "Look what happened to the J6ers." They're political prisoners, and now everybody's afraid to do anything. If he goes in and he frees these individuals, people might have the guts to start standing up. So this is dangerous, for the people that don't like freedom, would be the way to put it. Again, Trump would be great for a failing economy. You have to crash the economy before you install something else. If he gets in and he somehow revitalizes the economy, again, for the average American, right? Then they can't crash it. The controlled demolition doesn't work. The war in Ukraine, I think he would immediately have the United States pull completely out of it, NATO or not. He doesn't care. Uh, you know, it is what it is. I think he's gonna pull us out of these wars that we don't need to be tied up into, and there's a lot of money going over there, okay? So this is dangerous for these individuals in the deep state, and I think there's a focus on the border, and we all know what's been happening at the border, right? If he puts an end to this, this ends the idea of a North American Union. Because, folks, let's face it, that is the idea. I mean, this article came from the EU, the European Union, right? They view Europe as one country, basically. That's how they want North America to be. That's why they don't care if we're being flooded. They look at this as a good thing. We'll just mix everything up and we'll consolidate power. Trump is bad. He's going to work against them on that. So they really don't want this man in, but if he's going to get in, they are trying to kneecap him any way possible. And quite frankly, they used the pandemic the first time. The pandemic kneecapped this man the first time around, along with the deep state. And it just, to me, again, y'all let me know what you think. It just feels like the same playbook all over again between the pandemic and the firewall being installed in Congress. But I don't know. That's my thoughts today. Y'all take care and God bless.